Hello again, and welcome to Denton's Tales. Once again, we journey to the realm of the paranormal, the supernatural, the occult, or the world of ghosties, ghoulies, and lang-leggedy beasties, as Robbie Burns put it. But the question must be asked, is the paranormal, the supernatural, or whatever else you want to call things that go bump in the night, really an actual thing? Is it something tangible? Or is it simply a product of the imagination, of misunderstood natural phenomena or psychological issues? In other words, does it really exist? Or is it something merely in the minds of people needing psychiatric help? Is it psychosomatic, a condition defined in the dictionary as being caused or aggravated by a mental factor such as internal conflict or stress? That is a question that I have actually studied for many years, and I have reached what I consider to be reasonable and, in fact, provable, as well as logical answers. I think the following stories really speak for themselves. More tales of the paranormal, again from people that I know and trust. And here's a couple of curious experiences that were recounted by a good friend of mine, and I quote, "I was about 8 years old, playing by myself on the stairs. I looked down, and a man walked from the dining room through the wall into the lounge. It puzzled me rather than frightened. I told my dad, and he had an explanation of human lives being recorded on the film of time, always playing for those who could see. Now, it was a new build house on a field, therefore it had not existed when the man was walking to and fro. In one Edwardian terrace that I lived in alone, sizable pieces of round-edged, single-coloured glass would appear on the floor. I would pick them up and recycle them. This occurred with greater frequency until it was annoying, at which point the glass appeared in front of my face, in mid-air, then dropped to the floor. I said out loud, 'Okay, I know that you are there,' as I thought that it was an invisible ghost trying to attract my attention. The glass materializing never occurred again." Make what you will of that. It seems to me that the suggested reason, something unseen trying to attract attention, and its presence recognized, is the most probable explanation, though why, I have no idea. Why being recognized would benefit it in some way. But as the strange incidents with the glass ceased, well, that must have been the reason. That does seem logical. I think there are a number of valid points that can be made regarding the stories that I have been talking about in my videos and the credibility of the witness statements, which many people might well dismiss as imagination, flights of fancy, or delusions resulting in from some mental condition. But you see, something that exists only in the mind of a person, delusion and imagination, something misrepresented or misunderstood, cannot, by definition, have a witness. It cannot be seen or felt by anyone other than the deluded person, him or herself. That, again, is just logic. If two or more people see or hear the same thing, then that thing, whatever it may be, actually exists. It is physically there, if it can be seen. It is the genuine sound of something that exists, if it can be heard. Any question of so-called mass hysteria or autosuggestion is ruled out if two or more people see or hear the same thing simultaneously, without any prior suggestion from another person as to what they could expect to see or hear. That really cannot be disputed. That is a fact. In this series of videos, I have mentioned a number of cases where things were seen or heard, even felt, by more than one person. My friend, who was thrown out of bed and flung across the room, witnessed by the woman he was in bed with, and confirmed by the lacerations on his back due to hitting the wall. The elderly woman who came to view the Easter hats laid out at the end of the bed, witnessed by the 4 girls who were in the bed before she went out through the door without opening it. An occurrence that happened every Easter. Or the family who witnessed the mirror cracking 3 times as they turned 3 times. Those events were clearly not psychosomatic. They were not produced by something going on in the observer's brain. They were real, they occurred. That cannot be questioned. A number of people do not have the same mental problem, the same delusions all occurring at the same time. I think that is really rather obvious. And in the case of the elderly woman looking at the hats on the bed, she clearly had conscious awareness of who and what was in the room. She knew where each hat was, looking directly at them. She knew where each of the girls were, again, looking at each in turn, showing beyond any question that she was there, present in the room, not just some apparition, like an akashic recording of a past event, replaying, as was suggested by my friend's father in that account I mentioned a few minutes ago. No, she was there in the room. She had to be. Some things, of course, are only felt, nothing specific, just a feeling, though these feelings can often be quite strong, as in the case of my friend Alice Goss in the UK, who told me, and I quote, "I used to go into an old medieval church and play the organ. I knew I was alone, but I knew also that I wasn't, as I could feel a presence near me. Who was it, I wonder?" Well, I wondered too, and I asked her for more details. She replied, and I quote, "The church was St Leonard's at the Hythe in Colchester. I used to manage this old redundant church on behalf of the church's Conservation Trust. I used to go in and play the organ, sometimes early evening as dusk settled. No matter what time of the day that I was there alone, I always felt a presence that I wasn't alone. As there are numerous vaults under the floor, I always said hello on arrival and goodbye on leaving, just in case someone was listening. They listened, I'm sure. Once a friend was with me, and as I played, she sat in the nave and witnessed a Civil War soldier walk through the walls to the outside on the south side. Back in 1648, the church was attacked by parliamentary forces during the siege of Colchester, attacking the royalist soldiers who were inside. The south porch and the old door still show the musket and cannonball impact marks from that day in July of 1648. There is also a room no longer accessible above the south porch, which was once used as a prison. Did someone die in there? Who knows? Well, sadly, we don't. And it's a pity we don't know more about it. But in the case of feelings, well, there isn't really much more to know. A feeling is just that, a feeling. But a Civil War soldier who seemingly wasn't staying for the organ recital adds an interesting touch, combining mere feelings with an actual observation. Now, I wouldn't normally identify the people whose stories I use, but in Alice's case I am, with her permission, because she's a brilliant vlogger with a great interest in history, visiting many places across Europe. And she has a video that tells the fascinating history of St Leonard's Church and its connection with the English Civil War, and showing some of the damage it suffered during those times. And I give a link below to that video. Colchester History Walk 6, it's called. Actually, all her videos are well worth watching. I'd highly recommend Alice Goss to anyone with an interest in Europe and in history in particular. Are some paranormal events caused by perhaps a form of recording, imprinted perhaps on the Akashic record as it's known, and triggered every now and then, playing like a DVD? Well, I think the answer has to be yes. That seems a logical explanation for the phantoms that show no awareness of anything. They don't look at anyone or react in any way. The grey ladies, or the ghost of Anne Boleyn that floats down a corridor. The half-nun and the man in the long coat in Trinity College, as I mentioned in a previous video, would come into that category. The English Civil War soldier that Alice Goss mentioned would seem to fit that category also, showing no conscious awareness of the person who saw him. Most reported hauntings actually fall into that category. A misty shape, a vague outline of something, nothing really tangible, something glimpsed, though others, like the soldier, can be clearly visible and identified. And there have been what seem to be very clear reenactments of known past events. I'll briefly quote one such that occurred here in Ireland some years ago. A man was walking down a country road one night when he saw several trucks Uniformed men were jumping off the trucks that carried rifles, and there seemed to be some kind of military action going on. And the man panicked and dived for cover into a ditch, as one would. Nothing about the scene initially striking him as unreal. But when he looked more closely, he realized the trucks were Crosley tenders, not used since the 1920s. And the men wore the uniforms of the Royal Irish Constabulary, a force disbanded in 1922. Then, in an instant, it all vanished. Now, he did some research, and he discovered that an IRA ambush had taken place at that very spot during the War of Independence. Clearly, that ambush was not taking place there and then when he observed it. It was an event from decades previously, replaying in some way, but looking completely realistic. No vague grey ladies floating down corridors about that incident. Now, here's quite a remarkable story from a friend in the United States. She writes, "I was approached and asked to do if I could do a cleansing on a friend's house, as the Catholic Church was going to charge a member $250, which she didn't have after her husband's passing. Her husband had battled alcoholism very badly, and she felt him in her home many weeks after his passing. She felt he was affecting her son. He was drinking, spending nights in the cemetery on the grave of his father. My heart broke for this woman, her child, and her friends who loved her dearly. My friend volunteered to help me. She wanted to consult a Ouija board. It wasn't anything I had done before. Of course, she wanted candles, meditation, the whole 9 yards. So I agreed. We lit the candles, meditated, then we called forth the husband to release him. We used the board to ask to bring forth messages that were unsaid. We asked the name of the person present. I was the one writing down the letters as they came across. Juan was his name, and he wanted to be forgiven for the pain. He kept writing sorrow. When Anna asked him to go to the light and release his earthly body of pain, every candle in the house went dark. The wicks were dug down into the soft wax. My whole house went dark. Thunder was rolling. I was scared shitless. And in a dark house. Yes, I did run to the first light outlet and ran around turning lights on. The following morning, we got ready to go to the lady's house. We took salt, sage, candles, and the fear that had been installed from the night before. I didn't know the gentleman's name that had passed, but it was Juan. The son kept repeating that his father was sorry for the life he had lived, shadowed by alcohol. This child was only 15. He was frightened by his dreams. His father came to him several times, and as I cleansed the house, the son came to me and said, "My father thanks you, and he's sorry to have scared you last night." I was a little in disbelief. This child was telling me he knew what had happened the night before. He told me he had seen his father and felt his fear of the light. He told him, "She brings the light with her. Allow it. Let her help you to help me." I still have some of the candles in a safe place, tucked away. Every now and then I pull it out and think of that child who had the spirit of his father that came to me with a message of seeking forgiveness. I haven't thought of this memory in years. Thank you for bringing it back up and reminding me of my purpose and my connection to all. May we all feel the veil lift every now and then to remind us of our eternalness. We are all one. Now, a very, very strange tale indeed. All the candles went out together, which is really rather impossible without a pretty strong wind. The wicks apparently pushed down right into the wax to extinguish them, which obviously couldn't happen unless someone or something physically did it, pushing them down. They got the man's name right, and the child knew what had happened, that the father had frightened the two women the night before. It would be hard not to accept the supernatural nature of that story. Now, a very strange and really quite frightening story from a very good friend of mine. She wrote, "May I confide in you? You have my permission to use this in your paranormal episodes on YouTube, by the way. For a few years now, especially during the summer months, I awake to the screams of a woman. This happens at 2 a.m., the same time every night. Once I awoke to seeing her face screaming at me whilst in a dream state. The screams are absolutely blood-curdling. Now, I asked her whether any details of the face, like was she injured or bloody, and she replied, no. She seemed lost, frustrated, eager to move on. She was drained of all colour. Now, I said that seemed like something, something had happened or will happen at 2 a.m., though what or where, of course, is impossible to know. But the time must be significant. It couldn't be just some random dream. Always the same time indicated that, and very likely connected to a real incident, either in the past or in the future. Now, she said, I expect it to happen now. I think that she seeks me out. She knows that I could help her move on, but I don't know what to do or how to approach it. Right now, I asked if she had thought of trying to make contact, when she woke at that time, perhaps try to meditate, think of that woman and try to connect. If whatever it is has happened, perhaps she could help her rest, and if it's yet to happen, perhaps she might prevent it. She replied, I have thought about it. I have thought about trying to help her, but I don't want to put myself in danger. That's the part that I am scared of. If a malicious entity was able to fully possess me last time, then what is stopping it from happening again? I must point out that my friend was possessed by something some time ago, which I mentioned in an earlier video, so she is naturally a bit apprehensive about further contact with anything otherworldly, and I can't say I blame her for that. I saw her concern, and I sent her some advice on protecting oneself, and I said that if she could make contact safely, it would be quite something, especially if she could help in some way, though protecting herself would be the priority. She replied, fascinating. If this occurrence happens again, as I am sure that it will, then I will abandon all fear and go with it. I will, as it were, open my mind and heart. Now, I greatly applaud her decision, and I certainly look forward to whatever results she may get. So that concludes this look at the paranormal, whatever it may actually be. I hope you found it interesting, perhaps scary, unsettling, or maybe you just dismiss it as utter rubbish believed in by funny old ladies who read tea leaves in the bottom of a cup. I do think that many of the stories I've recounted cannot be dismissed. They can't be written off as imagination or misunderstandings, flights of fancy, or the result of too many late nights in the pub. Whatever they actually are, these things are real, they happened. Though why they happened, I can't say with any certainty. I will be further critically examining the evidence for and against the existence of the paranormal in a later video. But goodbye for now, and I do hope that you will be able to sleep tonight with the light turned off. Goodbye.